When I was a kid, one of the coolest places to visit was an institution we all loved in the 80s, and that is the mall. The coolest one near my house was about 45 minutes from my hometown, and it was called Metro North Mall. Now the mall itself, which used to be located directly behind me and is now only just a standing Macy's building, housed one of the coolest stores ever. It was a store called US Nostalgia, and it was a music store that sold the coolest music merch ever. Now I've done some research on the store US Nostalgia and I cannot find anything. I don't know if US Nostalgia was a locally owned store only here in Kansas City or if it was a chain. But from my knowledge, I don't believe US Nostalgia sold music, but they sold everything else. Posters, bandanas, t-shirts, buttons, postcards. This place had the sweetest rock and roll merch ever. It was the place that I very first saw those 8x10 glossy Motley Crue Shout at the Devil photos, and having a overly religious mother who believed everything the 700 Club said and believed that the devil was literally inside heavy metal music. I could never own one of those photos, but every time I was in US Nostalgia, I stared at those for hours. It was the place I bought my very first mini Eddie Van Halen poster. I stuck it in my middle school locker. It got stolen my 7th grade year. I was heartbroken. And US Nostalgia is the place that I very first saw the KISS radio controlled van and the model van. I remember the model van, I believe, was $60, which seemed like $600 back then. And I know people will say, you know, the malls died because no one spent money there and no one went to them anymore, which is true, but the fact that the malls no longer exist and are a part of history is kind of sad, because the malls held such a magical place in our society. It was where we went to on Friday night. It's a place of fun and a place of, well, now memories. And the fact that many years ago I stood somewhere in this parking lot as a youngster staring at the KISS radio control van. I mean, that's pretty sweet. And the fact that, you know, I still hold those memories to this day is proof the mall was a wonderful place. And whenever I think of malls or stores like US Nostalgia and the rock and roll merch that existed in those stores, I always go back to KISS Animalize from 1984. And what actually spawned this idea was I ran across this Heavens on Fire 45 in a thrift store. I love to imagine the history of things and where it came from, where it's been. And I started to think about this 45 and really wondering, like, who bought it? What kid went into a mall and purchased this 45 at a Camelot Music? They probably had a leopard or tiger print bandana tied around their leg, hair feathered to the T, wanting the brand new KISS single. I love to think about things like that. I know it's silly. History is pretty fun. And although there wasn't a lot of merchandise back in 1984, mainly it was t-shirts and posters. In my collection, I have this Animalize sticker from Winterland Productions featuring Mark St. John. This Animalize patch with the animal print, very 80s. something that would have existed inside US nostalgia. And my favorite piece, the Animalize era bumper sticker featuring Mark St. John from Funky. What is actually my favorite thing about this piece is that the peg hole has not been punched out, and I love to imagine a kid working in a store like US Nostalgia, and his job, his or her job, was to stock these bumper stickers. Like they had to razor cut open a box, pull out all of these bumper stickers, and align them in order on the display case. I love to imagine stuff like that. That, to me, the history of where something has been is the fun of collecting. And one of the dilemmas I have as a KISS collector is I tend to design my basement around a certain era. My basement is designed kind of like your grandma's house would have been in 1983 had she been a KISS fan. Reading material, couch decor, fancy lighting, comforters. It's all kind of done in that grandma 1983, but she's a KISS fan vibe. Thus, when I get items like 80's merch, I display it. However, it's not front and center like a lot of the vintage merch that I have in my collection. And I've noticed when people post their collection rooms, you really don't see a lot of non-makeup merch. You mainly see vintage and then that Spencer's era KISS merch. I'm sure there's people out there, but you rarely see full-on non-makeup collections. Which brings me to this. A lot of KISS collectors would say, well, that's not vintage. It's from 1984. It's 34 years old. Wouldn't that make it vintage? So that's sort of the dilemma I have as a KISS collector. If in the middle of all the vintage merch, you throw up an Animalize poster, does it completely throw off the design of your room? And regardless if you like KISS, your room should be KISS, no matter the era, no matter the personnel in the band, no matter makeup, non-makeup. I know a lot of people only like 73 to 82, and that's it. But there's a whole other era of great albums and great songs and great merch out there from a time that doesn't exist anymore. The days of the mall are gone, but it was a great place to hang out. Thank you for hanging out with me today. Take care, be safe, never stop having fun, and I will talk to you soon. This is the old movie theater. Saw many a Friday the 13th in here. That is awesome. Many a good timer had in there. Many a good time.
Working here was fun. I mean, they really kept it up. But it's a shame they started letting it go. You know, it's just a thing of the past, I guess. Black along the roof up there, that's where center court is. You can see all the skylights there up above it, little bumps that you can see on the roof. About where the blue truck is, it used to go into the mall. You had your theaters on the left, and then you had Butch's Cafeteria, a game place like pinball and stuff like that, and then you had Dairy Queen on the end, It used to be a Dairy Queen back in the thriving days. It's a shame though. It was a nice mall.